Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. My name is Dan Allen. I'm joined by Ellen Thomas. And Ellen, we've got a very exciting guest today, don't we?
Yes. Hi, Dan. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited about today's episode. We are joined by Nora Twomey, who is an Irish animator, director, screenwriter and producer. She is the co-founder of CARTOON Saloon, a BAFTA-winning and 5-time Oscar-nominated animation studio and production company based in Kilkenny in Ireland. The studio tells brave and beautiful stories, a blend of old and new, drawing upon Irish folklore as well as contemporary issues such as in The Breadwinner, which was directed by Nora and received huge critical acclaim. So yeah, I'm super excited. I'm a huge fan of their work, and animation is something I know little about, the immense task that goes into creating it. So ready to learn. Absolutely. Well, without any further ado, welcome to the podcast, Nora. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Very good. We are so excited to have you on board. Firstly, I just want to start. What was it like, and where were you when you found out you were nominated for an Academy Award with your film?
Oh, the first time. So in our studio. So our studio has been nominated a number of times at this point, which has been amazing. And the first time was for The Secret of Kells, and we had no expectation at all. Nobody was listening to the announcements of the the nominations announcements, which was, I think, around our lunchtime or something. And I think I was at home, actually, I think. And it was one of the crew, Karen, who was working with us at the time, did listen in, and so she started screaming at her desk. Everybody wondered what was was there a mouse or a rat or something like that. And so when she eventually got the words out as to what had happened, it was complete and utter shock. So where I was living at the time, I had really bad reception on my phone, so I had to stand on a particular step on the stairs to kind of hear what was going on. And so it was incredible, and it was kind of hard to believe for us. And it actually also came at a really crucial moment with our studio, because we were struggling financially, and so the attention that the Academy Award nomination brought us and the doors that it opened was something that we couldn't have bought. We couldn't, we couldn't write it in a business plan. Well, if we get an Academy Award nomination, we're going to, visit LA and go to all the major studios and go on tour with our film and all of that, because it had kind of come and gone from the cinemas without making. It's very difficult for independent films to try and elbow some space into the cinemas. The cinemas have been struggling, for many years, and for them to take a bet on, okay, is this going to be a successful film? Is this going to be a critically acclaimed film? Is this something that we can, devote this, this amount of screens to, rather than something else? So it's always a big gamble for people. So the stamp of approval, the Academy stamp of approval, meant a huge deal to us, and we really felt seen, I guess. And it did. Yeah. It was the beginning of the stabilization of our company, because we'd been on the go for nearly a decade at that point. So it seemed like we were an overnight success, but we had worked our butts off for many, many years, all hours, to try and get to where we were at. And it seemed like it wasn't going to pay off, So the Academy Award nomination did mean the world to us. It gave us attention within Ireland, where we're based, but then an international stage as well. And it's something that we're really, really grateful for. And then it managed, on a number of occasions that we managed to get a nomination, which again was huge, because we were building an audience for our films,
You're 5 times nominated, I think, for an Oscar, and you've obviously won lots of other awards, like a BAFTA, I believe. And does it ever get old?
That's right. Yeah. No, we've been really. It's been really amazing, but it's also I suppose because we started out in Cartoon Saloon because we were a group of college friends who didn't want to leave the country really to go and find work at the time. Lots of our peers were going to games companies in the UK and in the big studios in Hollywood and that, and we wanted to kind of make our own stuff. Animation is extremely time consuming. And so if you're part of a story that you don't believe in 100%, or a film that you know that you're not 100% on board with, that's a lot of commitment to give to something that's a huge portion of your life. And we were already lucky, or I certainly felt already lucky enough to get to do what I want to do every day, drawing, speaking with other creative people, literally merging my brain with other creatives to try and come up with something that's way better than any of us could individually. You just want to make sure that the stories are worth it. And for us, that's always been trying to tell a story that's brave in some kind of a way, and then that there's beauty to it in some kind of a way as well. So once we have those two ingredients, we can, we all put our, whether it's, we've got like accountants working with us, people who specialize in finance, people who specialize in law. So we've different people working with us, all for the one kind of vision. So in the case of Song of the Sea, for example, our second feature film, we managed to get, it was a co-production, so different studios managed to pull together bits of money. So in Ireland, it's a small population, 5 million, and so you're not going to be able to pull together the finance in Ireland for an entire feature film. So we co-produced with Luxembourg, with France, with Denmark. So it was a massive kind of co-production, but you're able to pull all of these, again, like-minded kind of small studios together if they can get behind a vision, and if they can get behind a story. And in the case of Song of the Sea, it's about a young boy who kind of rejected and resented his younger sister, which is, I won't say it's universal, but sibling tensions are...
It's relatable.
Yeah, exactly. Or even if you don't have a sibling.
I can relate.
So, but that's it, the more you find something of yourself that's slightly embarrassing or shameful, or if you can admit something to yourself and then put that on the screen in some way, other people, animators, artists, background artists, sound designers, they'll all be able to get on board with that, because it's a simple thing in a sense. It's coded in mythology and magic and all of this and adventure, but it's a simple thing of a boy saying, I kind of wish I didn't have a sister, and it hits you in the heart, and that's the thing. And so it doesn't matter whether you're, working in Ireland animating a scene, or you're working in Denmark animating a scene, you get that, it's pretty universal, no matter where you're at. So that's what we're always trying to get, that the little bit of truth, and then bind it in magic and folklore and adventure and all of these kind of things, and then that's what we want to kind of bring to the screen.
Why animation?
That's a great question, and actually that's a question that a lot of, not just in Cartoon Saloon, but a lot of the directors in Pixar will ask themselves that, if for a story, why does it have to be animated? Because animation is extremely labor intensive. It takes a long time. So a film can take 2 years in production. You might be 6 months or a year honing a script. You might be another year making a storyboard for that, as a storyboard animatic, so an edited storyboard. So why animate it? And different directors have different answers for that. Some say, well, it has to be a story that has a fantastical element, because then it deserves to be animated. If a unicorn flies down, from a cloud at the beginning of, it's one thing if it's live action, it's something else if it's animation. Your audience will take a leap of faith and a leap of imagination with you because of the medium that you're employing. But personally, I think I'm not really of the belief that there has to be something special in that sense, like magical, or or something that you're really signposting that this is for a very young audience or something like that, or a family audience. I really love animated films that also can express something very sophisticated and very like heavy subject matter, because when you animate something, you distill it, you choose what line to draw. When you shoot something in live action, of course, your cinematographer, it will choose the lighting, the shot choice will be very particular and all of this. But there's something about when you're literally in hand-drawn animation in particular, you're choosing what lines to draw and what lines to omit. And again, considering none of us have any actual lines around us, right? So you're creating something that distills the visuals in a way that draws your audience's attention to very specific things, and that's very poetic. And then when you combine that, whatever your subject matter, whether it's a war film or or a film about magic unicorns in the clouds, you're making very specific decisions. And then oftentimes animation, particularly hand-drawn animation, it's very timeless. So, I referenced The Secret of Kells, which was made back in 2007. It was released, and I kind of look at it as though we could have made it here yesterday. It has a look to it that it doesn't date. So if we'd have made it in 3D animation, or if we had shot it in live action, we couldn't have afforded to, because it would have had to be a period piece, and it was way too, with this big battle or big invasion kind of in it and everything. So we couldn't have afforded it in live action. But if we had made it in 3D, the technology that we would have been using back in 2008 would have dated badly by now. So the rendering capabilities, the model, the rigging, all of that kind of stuff that has come on in leaps and bounds would have dated the film. So we like a lot of freedom, and not like, so we prefer, you can, it's like this thing, like you can have something fast or good or whatever. I can't remember the third thing. You can't have everything.
Or cheap, fast, good, or cheap.
That's it, exactly. So you can't have everything. You have to make choices. And for us, we got a lot of creative freedom by never asking people for very much money to do what we wanted to do. And then we would, again, like I said, identify friends and partners around the world who had the same kind of sensibility or complementary skills to us. And so with that, then you had tremendous creative freedom, but within the restrictions of, you actually only have this amount of time and this amount of money, and you have to communicate really well with your partners with whom English might not be their first language. You really need to communicate well so that you can get the creative kind of juices flowing across continents and seas and that. So so we prefer creative freedom is, I guess, our true wealth, or what our idea of wealth is. It's not share prices on our company or who we manage to sell to or whatever. It's actually the creative freedom, because we're just a bunch of artists and animators at the core.
Yeah. It's funny, just going back to what you were saying about how you're distilling things. And I always think about animation as something that's so detailed and like fantastical, but at the same time, you have the choice to make it much simpler and like simplify stories. And I was just wondering how you kind of decide which stories to tell, and which stories you like telling through animation.
That's really interesting. There's a whole kind of discussion around whether like a lot of people refer to animation as a genre. So if a film is animated, okay, well, that's a family film. It's probably got a sidekick in it. There's going to be a musical number or whatever, and that would put it into a genre camp, the same as like horror films are genre, or comedies or romantic comedies or whatever. And you have a lot of directors and creatives that kind of that fight back and say, no, it's a medium. You can choose that medium for any type of story. And for us, again, because it is so labor intensive, and because, again, if I compare myself to like a live action director or producer, live action producers certainly have like a lot of films at different stages of development, and maybe one in production and another one in pre-production and another one in post-production, and in animation it's much slower. So our company has been in existence for 25 years, and I think we have 5 feature films in that space of time. So that's not we have another one that's just going to be finished at the end of this year now, called Julian, based on a book by Jessica Love called Julian as a Mermaid. But this is the pace that we move at, a very, very slow pace. And so we have to be really careful about choosing the projects that we work on, because if it goes wrong, if it's something that's not gelling with the sensibility of the studio or the crew or whatever, then that's a big mistake.
And you're doing it for such a long time as well.
Yeah, we are, and we have a responsibility not just to our crew but to our financiers as well, right? So, we're trying to get money from wherever we can, but in ways that are not going to kind of harm the company in the long term. So, a lot, like the UK has tax breaks for UK productions. Ireland has tax breaks for Irish productions, so you can raise part of the budget through tax breaks if you commit to doing that work in the country that you raise the tax breaks from, and all kinds of financing. But we have a responsibility to our financiers and to our crew and to our audience. I mean, we've been spending this 25 years kind of growing an audience for stories that are a little bit outside the box, that take maybe a couple of more risks, that aren't oftentimes, not that, but sometimes films, especially animated films, can be geared towards merchandise and that kind of thing, and not particularly, stories that need to be told, or that really excite and inspire us. And so choosing stories, I have 2 partners in Cartoon Saloon, Tomm Moore and Paul Young, and we started out in college together. We still work with a number of people that we went to college with, and trusting that kind of shared sensibility and that kind of heart. So I know that if Paul is very excited by something, an idea or a character, or partners, creative partners as well, I know that that's going to be, I trust his sensibility. I have respect for his sensibility. It's grown over many years, as has mine. And so that's and the same with Tomm, and Tomm absolutely has this wonderful magic touch with just again, I think very much from him, everything is very personal. It's coming from something within him. Oftentimes his character designs in his films reflect somebody in his life, his son, his wife, his granddaughter. His everything is very personal to him. But in ways, again, the more personal, in a sense, you make things as a director, or writer, or creator, the more universal it is, because everybody can feel it. They know that there's a truth to it, and so that's amazing.
I wondered. Obviously, I have a sense, being a director in fiction, I know sort of what that process is in live action. What's that process like in animation? Are you in the trenches, as it were, hand drawing? Is that where you started? Or what is your day-to-day when you're working on a feature? And are there periods of time where you're more and less involved with the animation process?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I'm not going to talk for all directors here, because all animation directors, because I know animation directors who've come at it from editing, from writing, from animation, from art direction, and they all have a different approach, and they all have a different superpower understanding of a particular area within animation production. And mine has changed over the years. For example, Tomm will draw immediately when he's thinking about a story. he will be drawing. It's a way of processing for him. Even when he's in meetings, he will draw the people that he's in meetings with. No, but the way his brain works. Yeah, it's the way his brain works.
I'm just imagining them not being favourable.
Yeah.
Imagine if like,
oh no,
God, that's how you see me. Jesus Christ.
There is, everybody does kind of straighten their backs and like tuck their chin a little bit, like, you know, when he's drawing.
Yeah, are they like caricatures?
No, they're really. He generally, you know, finds something. They're sensitive drawings. He'll usually find something, and they're actually more like. It's not even that they manage to, you know, catch exact likenesses, but they're actually an expression oftentimes of the mood of a meeting. You know, if somebody's stressed or if somebody's really happy or excited or whatever, he kind of, that's what he gets, you know. So that's amazing. And do you know what? I think education is starting to go in a way that kind of recognizes that people have different ways of processing and different ways of understanding, different ways of accessing their creativity and their problem solving and all of that. And there's more space in classrooms now for people who draw while they're listening to a teacher, or if they're not making direct eye contact, that doesn't mean that they're not listening or they're not processing or whatever. So he's going to draw character design, particularly animation. He's interested in every aspect of filmmaking and animation, and oftentimes when he's even, say, conceiving of an idea, right, of something that really is going on from right now in his life or went on for him, you know, that he really wants to access, or a story that he heard that he wants, that really kind of resonates with him. It's through the drawing of the characters and moments. So moments that he wants to see on the screen, sometimes from like the climax of the film or something like that. So the most visually kind of, you know, emotional and passionate, stunning kind of, you know, that's what he's going for. And that'll change. Like he doesn't fall. Well, he does. Yeah, he does fall in love with ideas and drawings. But oftentimes, like character design will change a lot. You know, through this process. When he brings on a writer, that'll change again. And that, in terms of skills and myself. I love the writing process, and I love working with writers, and I love how they can access. It's funny how similar. Like a writer will, if a writer comes to a director and says, okay, like, here's the idea, here's the book we're adapting or whatever, and what is it about this book that really sings to you, right? Oftentimes I'll be really tired and drained after a meeting, one of those meetings with a writer, because they're literally pulling out of me like a therapist or something. What is it? Is it, for example, in the Breadwinner, which is a film about a young girl growing up in Afghanistan, in a time of conflict where her rights to her own voice or to her education or to her, expression were not something that she could at all take for granted. So the screenwriter Anita Duran really wanted to pull out what was it with me that really that idea and that journey really resonated. And so for me, it's because growing up in Ireland, my mother had been a midwife in the 1960s, at a time where the church in Ireland had an awful lot of control in state institutions like hospitals, schools, etc. And so a lot of women were kind of literally thrown away at the time, right? So in that they, if they were troublesome, if they had gotten into trouble, if something had happened to them, they were institutionalized, and some of those women never managed to make it out of those institutions. So without a trial, without being, deemed guilty of anything beyond whispers, their lives would be, thrown away. And so I know that I'm not many generations away from girls and women lacking the liberty that is their human right. And so I know that I'm standing on the shoulders of women whose voices I will never get to hear because they were never seen as important. There are no books written about them or in their name. And so if that's what I recognized in the novel, Deborah Ellis's novel, the Breadwinner, that sense of sisterhood, and so that's what Anita managed to put onto the page there, and so passionately and so brilliantly. And then so I suppose in terms of like what areas that I'm really interested in animation, I started out what I studied in college was 2D classical animation in the style of Disney, in the style of Don Bluth, and that very cushioned, almost theatrical style of animation. But it was a great grounding. I learned a lot about like physics. By just drawing human body, by drawing expressions, by stopping, which I still do, stop, frame something like YouTube now, kind of thing, or whatever, and just to draw frames of movement, ballet, dancer, somebody slumping on a couch or something like that, to see if I can catch it like Tomm does, like kind of catch the emotion in the drawing. And so that's where I started out. I love animation because I love performance, and some people say that animators are like actors, like shy actors with pencils, basically, because they have to understand. They have to understand performance, and they're working alongside, in a way, like a voice actor. So a voice actor will use their voice to express the character. The animator then will take the physical side of that performance and give life to that. And that's a really interesting thing, actually. Sometimes actors, if they meet animators are so... because animation takes such a long time, an animator can spend a week animating 5 or 6 seconds of screen time, and so they'll have heard every time an actor like swallows, or they trip over their words. They'll have heard it multiple times because they've had to break down that performance and imagine it, and then imagine how they're going to work with other animators, to bring that performance to life. So I love animation, but I don't do much of it anymore. I'm mostly I do a lot of editing now with storyboards, because what's different from live action and animation, in live action you can often rediscover your film because the director will have shot lots of footage. He might have actually asked his actors to improvise some of it. He might have got some shots that he mightn't have realized are important at the time, and the editor in live action can help your director discover or rediscover or tell a slightly different story than was intended in the script. Whereas with animation, you can't afford to take multiple to shoot multiple, or not, but animate multiple takes of something. You just literally can't afford to do that, and also you'd spend all of your animators' energy. So you have to know, as a director, before your animators start, what are the shots that you need, how you can use, like, even where the score is going to be really powerful and you don't need any dialogue, you can take some of the dialogue that was in the script away and honor that moment, that emotional moment, in a different way. And so that's the seat of power, I think, really is the edit in animation, And before any animator starts animating the first scene, your film is either going to work or it doesn't work. In that rough storyboard animatic, where your storyboarders might have done, rough drawings, you have a score in there that's not your actual final score, but it's just like a temp score that you're using, or maybe you've borrowed some from different films that kind of are like what you want to do for your film. You mightn't even have your final actors' performances in there. You might be using your own voice and some of the crew's voice to just put in the dialogue for now, to see, does your film work? And if it works in that kind of state of roughness and incomplete, where you can't rely on the beauty of a gesture of a hand or something like that, if it works like that, if you can make people laugh and cry and feel emotionally invested in the characters that you've put up on the screen, then your film works, and in a way your job is done as a director. Or like, really, after that, then you're explaining to your animators why the scenes exist. You've had to fight with them with an editor, for those scenes, with an editor, with a head of story, sometimes, with your storyboarders, maybe with your actors saying, well, why am I saying this line, and oftentimes as a director, you're just saying the same stuff over and over again. Like with Song of the Sea, it's a boy, why is he doing this in this scene? Well, because he doesn't really accept his sister yet, or because now he's realized that he loves his sister and he, is frightened for her life, and he has to save her or something, whatever. Or with the Breadwinner, it was like, well, why doesn't she just get up and stamp her feet and say, I'm not doing that, and say, well, that's not who she is, and that's not where we're starting out from, or whatever. So you get to know all that stuff, really. That's why I would have difficulty, I would think, moving to live action, because everything is so snappy, and much more making decisions on the fly, whereas in animation you oftentimes, if you make a mistake, it was a slow one. It's like if you fall over it slowly, you're not going to do it again. You know what I mean? So it's a whole different thing. Yeah,
I think that's a misconception that I've had, is that you record the dialogue afterwards with animation. Like, I've never really thought that, and it's almost like the process it's working backwards in a way, which is super interesting.
Well, some studios do, like a lot of Japanese studios will do that. So the Ghibli studios, like Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, The Grave of the Fireflies, they will record the voices afterwards. So they will, I'm sure it's, I don't know, actually, it's the directors or some of the animators' voices, and then they will voice in afterwards. So it's just different ways of working.
Yeah. Also, you've mentioned a couple of times about finding your collaborators at college, and I think a lot of our young listeners would be interested to hear about that process, because I'm sure they're having conversations with friends about potential collaborations and exciting ideas, and I'm just like, how did you move that from exciting conversations at college into an actual sort of production company? Did you experience like self-doubt, or like it's a brave thing to do? How was that process?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't, I don't think it was particularly, but if you're prepared to kind of live on beans and toast, a bit, it's a very nutritious meal. If you can put some potatoes in there, it's really good. But for me personally, because I left school at 15 with no qualifications, and worked in different jobs, like a factory, for a couple of years, until I went back as a mature student at 22. And so every time a teacher, a tutor, professor, whatever, stood in front of me to tell me something I didn't know, I lapped it up. I just loved every instant of just getting to. It just felt like a luxury. I was getting to somebody was standing in front of me and teaching me something, or opening a question mark in my head or something like that. That was really really amazing. Like any kind of courses that you can do when you're younger have a profound effect on you all the way through your life. So, I mentioned Tomm a number of times. So he went to when he was a teenager, he went to an organization here in Kilkenny called Young Irish Filmmakers. It was a primarily kind of live action, very, pretty modest organization that just got some equipment, cameras, sound equipment, and got young people to create scripts, start to break those down, cast them, crew up, all of the kind of stuff that you do in a professional life. They got young people to do this, and that gave them, that entire group of young people, and it has been doing it for generations here in Kilkenny, massive confidence in their own ideas and their own creativity, their own voices, their own ability to collaborate. So instead of doing things, sometimes if you don't have a lot of, if you're not moving in creative circles a lot, you have an idea and you want to hold it to yourself because you don't want anybody else to get that idea because they might steal it or they might, you might lose it or something like that. And that's probably not what's going to happen. What would happen if you share your ideas?
That's really good.
Yeah, other people are going to be inspired by them. Or they might point out, oh, that's a really good idea, but have you thought of doing this with it? Or there's this problem with it. And then that forces you to grow creatively. And that creates a creative community. And if you're generous with your ideas, and this is not just for animation or filmmaking or storytelling in any kind of way, I would actually apply this to business as well. If you're generous and can see how can we make this work for everyone, how can we find an opportunity in this for everyone, rather than saying, okay, well, this is mine and I'm going to just hold it tightly. How can we support the independent animation industry as a whole across Europe or across the world? How can we create creative links between our studio here, small studio in Ireland and another one in Africa or South America or whatever. So that kind of thinking begets more. It becomes more and more creative. So so when by the time I met Tomm, he was 18, I was 22, 23. I was just blown away by the confidence that he had in his ideas, which he had learned from being a teenager in a creative organization, a non-profit organization. And Ross Stewart, who's also a member of Young Irish Filmmakers, who's an incredible art director, fine artist, was also part of that. Alan Slattery is a brilliant editor. All of these people came out of that time, and again, I can see the effect that Young Irish Filmmakers has, not just across Kilkenny, but then across the world, because lots of people go on to write and whatever, or maybe not. Maybe they choose a different path in life, but they have confidence now, and they've had somebody listen, and they know that there is worth in their voices and their creativity. Whether, like I said, they apply their creativity in different areas, and so. So then the animation college that I went to in Ballyfermot, that Tomm also went to, benefited from Young Irish Filmmakers, from that original organisation. And then when we came back to Kilkenny, because Young Irish Filmmakers offered us one room with little or no rent, they managed to get some kind of a small little, grant for us to just... And we leased, Paul knew somebody who we could lease a computer from, and that was the beginnings of it. So it was like the story of the elves and the shoemaker. You make one pair of shoes, you get enough money to make two pairs of shoes, and on it went. So we never got massive investment. The Irish government has always been very good to us, whether it's with helping us train, helping us know how to make connections with other studios in other countries, etc. So we've had huge amounts of support on a community level, on a national level with the Irish government through Screen Ireland or through Enterprise Ireland, and they've been with us. We've had really amazing creative partners. Our bank here in Kilkenny as well, AIB, they learned how to understand film funding and animation funding, so that they could understand what our cash flow needs were. All of these things are crucial, but it's from that kind of spirit of generosity. If you find yourself holding on to something tightly, that's fear, and you need to kind of grow. Grow beyond that and broaden out your creativity, because you'll find collaborators, and then your ideas will be 100 times better, and they'll be really, universal in the best possible way.
Yeah, I was wondering, in terms of being brave and sort of going forward, when it comes to your ideas and the films you want to tell, how do you settle on the way you want to present it? Obviously, once you've chosen what story, the thing with animation is obviously it could look 20 different ways. Do you try and be brave with the visual way you want to tell your stories, or is there sort of an instinct of it needs to look like this? Do you ever feel the urge to like not do what Ghibli do and not do what Disney do with their hand drawn? Like, are you trying to be set aside from them, or is it just more personal than that and they don't really factor in so much?
Well, influences always factor in. And again, like I would, encourage anybody who, like, if you love a particular film or a particular look, like do, draw it or study it. But then see why that means something for you, and what is it about that? I mean, early on, we were like before The Secret of Kells, when we were in the kind of design phase for that, a French producer who was the first, Didier Brunner, who's the first international producer to come on board with us. He kind of very much encouraged us to find our own storytelling voice and stop trying, because we had come out of college. We knew animation very well, and the designs that we had used oftentimes were Disney or Bluth, designs. And so we thought that was our idea of good, kind of like, as in, like, if it looks like Disney, then it's good. And also if you're an unproven studio and you're trying to make your mark, people will, call you like the Irish Disney or the Irish, Ghibli or whatever. They'll try and compare you to something known and something successful as a compliment to you, rather than you're just a Kilkenny Cartoon Saloon. So that's a thing. But finding a unique voice is very, it is important. But nothing is 100% unique. You'll see every art movement down through history. You'll see that artists of that movement were very much influenced by each other. And, maybe the famous ones are the ones, who really broke through or managed to, have the right, whatever the equivalent of agents were at the time, that they're the ones that you remember. But like, oftentimes it's a much bigger movement, and you can't really tell that when you're in it at the time. It's a... but we do try to make sure that the characters and that their designs are that they can do what they need to do for the story that's being told. So, again, with Song of the Sea, we use very simple character designs. We didn't have a huge budget for that, and again, the production was split over 5 different countries, and so the simpler the designs, the easier they were to animate. Literally, we call it like line mileage, right? So if you've got a character that has lots of detail and lots of lines in their hair and all this kind of stuff, that takes a long time to draw. So if you have literally fewer lines, it's
line mileage. I love that. I've heard frame economy is a phrase I've heard before as well. It's like, if they act in this way, then that's going to be that many frames. Whereas if they're doing this, or it's just slightly more stationary, then it's sort of like more frames.
Absolutely.
They're trying to strip it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Japanese animation has that down to a T. They know that they can have, literally a still. So one drawing where, 2 characters are having a conversation for about a minute. And that company, that whole production, the director and the animation team are saving themselves for the battle that's about to come. And then they go all out. There's something amazing going on. And then, you've got the wounded. And again, it's a held, like what we call a held cell, which is a really like an old way of describing it, back when animation was on this kind of plastic or acetate type, cells. But anyway, so it's like one drawing that's held for a number of, maybe a minute actually. But yeah, so we don't reach for the sky and say, oh, this is going to be amazing, and we're going to have anything is possible. You say, what do your characters need? What does your story need? How much time, how much money do we have? How much creative energy do we have? How do we not spend our animators doing stuff that's not important? Sometimes as a director, if I'm like running out of time, running out of money, you've got all of these amazing heads of departments who are running entire teams themselves. They're doing, brilliant jobs, but they might, for example, so for example, in animation, again, everything is hand drawn. The audience are looking at the character's face, right, on the screen. If the hand is also on the screen, and maybe the animator hasn't had time to pay, enough attention to the hand, and maybe it's growing and shrinking a little bit. Maybe sometimes the fingers aren't drawn that well, or whatever. As a director, I have to make a decision and say, okay, I can just approve this scene and it can go forward because the face is working really well. And if my audience is looking at that hand at the time, there's something wrong. There's something huge wrong with the scene, because they should be looking at the face, right? And so you do have to pick your battles a lot. Like, nothing is ever perfect. You have to accept that, and nobody is striving for perfection. You're striving to tell the best story you can, given the restrictions that you have, and you always have restrictions. And honestly, I look at those as, something that's actually a benefit, because otherwise you'd never finish. If you have no deadline, you'll never finish anything. It's funny that people always use the last amount of, the last minute that they have, whether it's for an exam or for, a piece of, whatever, filmmaking or whatever. You use the last minute that you have, because you just finish it. Who's it that says that films are never finished? They just take them away from you, So
they're just abandoned. As I've heard as well. Yeah.
Just have to press that forward.
So are you literally like looking at your roster of characters? It's like, okay, we've got all these characters, but this one's got too many lines on them. But that's okay because the others have far fewer lines. Is there line redistribution between your characters? Like, how are you sort of coming to the decision whether one's got too many, and does it sort of factor in with what's happening with the other ones as well?
Well, you look at them like they're they're a compilation, and we literally paste them alongside each other and say, okay, do they all belong in the one movie? Because if you've got one character with like very few lines and another character with loads of lines, they might not belong in the same movie, unless part of what you're trying to say as a director is, there's something very, there's a difference in how these two characters are, and that maybe that can work. We do look at, and again, you don't, it's not like you can think about all of this stuff together. When you're coming up with an idea for a film or a story or whatever, you're not thinking about line mileage or, kind of thing at that point. And you also, if you're lucky enough to get to work in animation, there are producers who look at the budget and the schedule and say, okay, I know that your writer wants to have 30 crowd scenes in this film, but we can't afford 30 crowd scenes. So can you cut one of these rebellions or fights or whatever is going on, and they'll talk to you realistically and say, look, if we're going to try and do that, then we have to bring the amount of animation that the animators have to handle up, which means yes, you can't have 400 lines on this character, because it's just not going to work. Something has to give. And so you as a director, you have to know what are the things that can give, you can let go of, and what are the things that you absolutely can't, because they are bound into the heart of the film. So realism is, but again, like I like those, I don't know, like, so I'm a mom. When my kids were very young, they liked being, like very, very young, like babies like to be what they call swaddled, right? So they like to feel that they have a confinement, and then they feel kind of comfortable. Oftentimes directors are a little like that as well. If you know what your guardrails are, what your parameters are, how much money, how much time, how much people, how much energy, then you say, okay, well, what can we make with all of those ingredients, and not try and make something that's outside of that. And actually, that's where huge creativity lies, and that's where I see the genius in some of the people that I work with when they come up with a solution for something that I'd never have thought of. All I do is like say, here's the problem. And, and they come up with like a solution that's just something that I wouldn't have thought of in a million years, but that fits the heart. All of these questions is like, okay, but does that work with the heart of the film? And the heart of the film is often one or two lines. A boy who resents his younger sister and then grows to realize that he has to save their life, or a girl who has to, act as a boy in order to save her family or to provide for them or whatever. You try and find the simplest way that you can to describe that heart, and then whatever the complicated problem that you might have down the line, yes, but how does it serve the heart?
Yeah. I was wondering about that in terms of like where you sort of allocate budget as well. Like, how does it work? Because I've always thought that the cool thing about animation is if you want to have a dragon in your film, a dragon's not going to cost you much more than a dog or just another human being. Is that true, or are dragons actually still expensive? And what things do cost a lot of money? Is it just how many characters are in one scene? Like, what are the actual factors that mean you have to take some stuff out and not have other things?
That's a really great question. Dragons and dogs cost the same. So, absolutely.
Ka-ching.
But amount of characters is a thing. Oftentimes, this is something that can happen in writing sometimes, right? You've made a draft of something, whether it's a short film, you realize there's a problem, there's a story problem. You've shown it, you've asked your friends to read it, and they've all kind of said, "Oh, it's great, but like there's something around here that's not working," or whatever. They don't understand it, whatever. The temptation can be to add something else on. I can fix that problem by adding in a dog or a dragon or a dinosaur or whatever, it happens a lot on feature films, or actually what happens a lot on short films is somebody tries to make a feature film in a short space of time, as opposed to having one idea that's about a feeling or
squeezing it
a
in.
moment. Sometimes, you can, if you find yourself adding on stuff to solve a problem, oftentimes it's taking away is a solution to something, to a story problem, taking away something that's just getting in the way. So lots of things, lots of ideas. It can be expensive. Crowds can be expensive, but there are interesting, if you come at it from a very artistic way and say, okay, now my crowd is, because if you're lucky enough to be able to go to theatre, right, and you see that sometimes on a play where again you have lots of restrictions, like what can you bring onto that stage? They might express water by dressing a lot of dancers in blue, and their movement becomes water, and you have your actor then that performs in that water, and your audience go there. They say, okay, that's water. I will make that leap of imagination with these characters, and oftentimes that experience can be more profound than if they had spent 100,000 on getting some kind of amazing stage something or other to express water. And it's the same with animation. Sometimes you can say, okay, well, we really do need a crowd here because this film is about revolution or something. And then your art director might say, okay, well, what if I express that crowd with just daubs of paint? And I just move those daubs of paint a little bit. And then we can get an amazing sound designer to bring a group of people in to express the anger of that crowd or whatever with real voice, and suddenly your audience is so much more invested because now you've engaged your audience. They have to say, now I have to make the leap of my imagination. Those are not daubs of paint, those are individual people, and they're all shouting for their rights or whatever, right? Your audience is far more invested than if you got an AI or a CG kind of fantastic looking, hyper realistic crowd in there. You're actually asking now your audience to invest, and their own creativity, their own imagination is invested in that. And oftentimes they can have a much more emotional experience because of the limitations that you've had to deal with, where you've had a producer say, no, you can't afford that.
I was as you were explaining the daubs of paint, I was picturing Pokemon in my head, which I know they do those really quite beautiful actually, watercolored backgrounds, and then just the characters themselves are sort of moving, but everything else is almost a different animation style in a way. It's almost more impressionistic. Although it's not how I remembered it as a kid, but looking at clips older, that certainly seemed different. Just before we come on to our last couple of questions, I wanted to ask how you sort of experienced and seen animation change over your time working in the field, and whether it still feels very much the same, or whether it is something that technology has evolved a lot.
I mean, it has, of course, evolved a huge amount in 25 years. And again, if you look at CG films, the first Pixar films and the first Pixar shorts, and where they are now, and even ourselves in terms of the labor intensity of what you need to do. So I don't think our company could exist if it hadn't just we hadn't just come into being, I suppose, at a particular time where you didn't need huge cameras anymore to shoot animation. So that they literally used to shoot pieces of plastic with drawings on them, with sheets of acetate. That was a huge expense, these massive drawing tables. And if you had to work in co-production, you had to literally ship paper from one place to another. We had to do that on the Secret of Kells.
Wow.
Yeah, that was on paper. A lot of it was on paper, but the compositing of it was all a digital process. So it has changed, and now we're on the cusp of another huge change where AI is coming into the mix, and what's going to happen there, I have no idea. And it's such an emotional topic for lots of creative people, and we've seen recently things like the Ghibli, the films be without their the creators' consent. Just going, viral, and it's the same discussion for composers, musicians, editors, etc. We're all writers. Everybody's having these kind of discussions. So in the technology side of things, yes, of course, anything is possible. Even looking at situations where like live action films where they've had to complete a performance of a character where the actor may have passed away or not be available, or recent examples where AI, for example, has been used to create voice performance from a bank of voice performance from an actor where, again, something may have happened or whatever. It's very hard to know where the moral stance is on any of this. Or again, if you have somebody with a phone who's in a place where they have to, maybe in a part of the world where there's a lot of conflict, and they can't reveal their identity for fear for their family, and if they're able to make something with tools that are available to them on their phone that can say something really authentic and passionate and heartfelt, who am I to say you can't do that? So there are so many. There's no one blanket thing that anybody can say about what's happening right now. There's so much nuance to it. There's the effect that AI is going to have on the planet, because even just to generate a lot of what it's generating, even at the moment, it's taking massive amounts of resources from countries. It's always changing. It's going through massive changes. The entire industry is going through massive changes. Whether Hollywood will be the center of storytelling, in 10 years' time is debatable. So everything changes. The more things change, the more we just realize that that there are just waves that come at us. I suppose if I wanted to put something across, it's that for thousands of years we've looked to stories, whether it's a story that your parent told you when you were trying to go to sleep, or woke up scared in the middle of the night, or when they needed to make an analogy, like for something that was very hurtful, or very like a big change that needed to happen, or whatever. Or as if you're a teenager and you're going through something, and one of your friends tells you that they experienced something similar, right? There's something about the human telling another human about their experience. Half a dozen people, 20 people, whatever, could tell me about something that doesn't cost them anything. Now, what I mean is that they don't have to reveal something of themselves, right? In order to put it across. But if one person tells me something true, they can. Like if I'm having a really bad day and they tell me, "I know what you're going through. I went through something kind of similar, and this helped me," and they tell me something about that, right? They're kind of creating a story. They're creating a logic to something that's probably chaotic, right? It's a piece of chaos in their lives that they managed to put a logic around and some wisdom around.
Yeah.
And their compassion for me is also wrapping this story, and it's giving it to me. So I'm not even talking about film really anymore. I'm talking about just human connection. That's what we look to stories for. whether it's a story about somebody, like I said, somebody just rationalizing what happened to them that day in school or whatever, or putting something up on a big screen that says, there was a time where I didn't really value my sister, whatever, that's huge. And but it's massive and it's universal, and you hear it. It doesn't matter whether it's wrapped in state of the art CGI or whatever, or somebody's hand drawn expression. It's
I feel like this brought us sort of round full circle, is sort of that idea of like, is that the universal in the specific that you sort of touched on at the start, which I think is really sort of powerful, and I think it's such a great guiding light for making something, or for finding a story that's going to resonate with audiences, which is it's really beautiful, I think. And like
the best resource that you have for storytelling is what you already have inside of you, and like your experiences, and that is really valuable. So you don't need to go out and do something really big and crazy. You already have it. And I think that's a really nice thing to know.
So we normally end with 2 questions that we ask every guest. We ask them what were they doing in their teenage years that set themselves up for what they do now, and then what advice would you give to that teenage version of yourself? And if you want to take a little moment and just think about, maybe what was the thing that you did that maybe didn't seem useful at the time, but actually turned out to be really useful. Mm-hmm. And then, what would you whisper in their ear?
I remember, it's funny because my son turns 15 today, and I remember where I was at 15. My dad had passed away the year before. I was struggling in school. I felt I was like a massive failure. I had no language around any of this, by the way. I mean, I'm looking back as a much older person now, kind of, and understanding the context. When you're in the middle of something, you can't really see the context of something. But I did feel like a huge failure, and I couldn't see a path forward. And the only thing I had, I suppose, that was helping me make sense of the world was drawing. So I would just escape in my head, like, draw unicorns, draw like, people wearing fashionable clothes. It didn't matter. Like, it was just anything that I could to escape that sense of, oh no, what am I going to do? I can't see a path forward in any way that makes sense. And of course, literally, the path was right in front of me. It was those doodles and drawings were the path that I needed to follow. And I suppose if I could look back and give that young person some advice, it's that it's going to be okay, and that those turns in the roads and the bumps in the road are the things that help you as a storyteller. It means that you have something that's valuable to say. There's that overused, was it Leonard Cohen, it's the cracks in your heart that let the light in, or something. Like all of these things that they do make you stronger. You don't, you learn how to cope with things. And you grow bigger than the things that you have to cope with, and then you have a new set of challenges, and you have to grow bigger than that again, and a new set, and you never know what's around the corner. But the one thing that is great, though, is when you find people whose hands you can hold, through that, in some way, and be generous with them. Then that's like, it's true wealth, it's true power. It's true strength, and so so it's going to be okay. Basically, is what I would say to that.
That's amazing.
That's so lovely.
Thank you so much for your time. This has honestly been really special, really lovely, and an absolute honour to chat with you.
Thank you so much
for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
The next generation.
Thank you very much.
That was such a fantastic conversation. I feel truly inspired. Like, I learned so much from Nora there as well. And
inspired is what I was going to say as well, actually. Like, genuinely, and inspired, uplifted.
Yeah. Sort of and really sort of reminded of the purpose of storytelling, and the roots of storytelling as well. Like, I think it's really nice chatting to people where they can look back on what has been so far a really successful career, and kind of like look at it as a whole and see like the really important things that shine through, and so much wisdom is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And the heart to sort of like, find your people early on and sort of stay with them. I feel like film's a lovely collaborative world, but to find your key collaborators, like the people that you're actually going to share this journey on moving forward, I think is really
so special.
Cool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I see a sort of animation obsession on the horizon for myself.
Absolutely. Well, if you haven't, obviously we've both seen the Breadwinner, but we're excited to see more of Nora's films, and also Studio Ghibli, as she was saying, that is also amazing. If you haven't seen what's it called? My favorite one, Spirited Away. So if you haven't seen that, Ellen,
which did you say?
As well. Spirited Away.
Oh yes, I remember. Spirited Away was probably one of the first films that I remember seeing, because I had a little DVD player in my car from when me and my family would do these.
One of those travel ones.
Yeah, these really long drives, and we got
the
it
days before iPads.
Yeah, we got it like free from like this campsite or something, and Spirited Away was the only DVD we had, and I would just watch it over and over again.
Yeah.
And I remember the pig scene being very scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so visceral, that one, isn't it?
But yeah, Studio Ghibli have so many amazing films. I'd recommend Princess Mononoke, and Kiki's Delivery Service is actually one of my favorite films ever. But that's but like also, if you like the world building, what I love is like, in the Breadwinner, for instance, in Nora's film, you've got this sort of like mixture. It's both a real world and also feels fantastical as well at the same time, and it sort of, I think, makes you re-experience the world around you as this sort of fantastical place. And it's it's such a blend of like historical context and like real life issues, but then there's like this mythical element, and these the storytelling is otherworldly, but it doesn't remove you from those core issues that it's discussing.
100%. We have got a question, Ellen. This
Lovely.
Question is from Sam. Sam wants to know, Sam says, I want to get into animation, but I don't know what type of animation to try first. What would you recommend? Wow.
I think I was going to say Nora touched upon this when she said, think about your own favourite animation styles or those films that you love watching, and don't be afraid that you're copying someone, and just let your style be born out of what you love.
I love that as an answer as well. It was sort of like wear your influences on your sleeve is what I sort of took that as, rather than just be like always fighting to differentiate yourself. It's actually no, that's the wrong approach. It's actually more about finding the things that you love, and embracing those and combining them, maybe smushing them together.
There is the Secret of Kells, which is one of Cartoon Saloon's films, is inspired by Irish folklore. So not just looking at inspiration with animations, but thinking about your favorite stories or just artwork in general that resonate with you. Yeah,
absolutely. And what I would say is the software for both 3D animation and 2D animation now that are sort of easy to get. Stop motion, you just need a camera, really. Then there's some software that will do stop motion for you. I don't know which one of them would be like, air quotes, easier. I think they all just require patience and time and energy. It's quite straightforward to sort of download some characters, I think, in 3D and start animating those. A lot of the principles are sort of the same once you sort of understand you're creating an impression of physics with your animation. That is always really key. You need to learn how to make something feel heavy or feel light with the way you animate things. But maybe there might be some tutorials online of animation, but maybe give them all a go. Do like a 10-second stop motion animation and a 10-second 3D animation and a 10-second cartoon, like hand-drawn animation. Although a lot of hand-drawn animation is also puppeted. I think there's a program called Toon Boom that it might be called something else now, but that sort of was the software for ages, maybe still is, for doing 2D animation.
And start small. Like whatever project you start doing, it doesn't have to be big. You can just do, like Nora said, like she was drawing ballet dancers, just like a few seconds, and just don't feel overwhelmed by creating something great straight away. Just try little bits and bobs.
100%. Ellen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for joining me. Yeah.
And we'll see you guys on a new episode. So
yeah.
Take
we
care,
hope you
and
enjoyed.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
And don't forget to send us your questions to podcast@youngfilmacademy.co.uk.